As you know, Black History, African American History, Afro-American History Month. My name is Charles Trott. I am the founder of DIA. DIA, for those who don't know, is an acronym for Diasporic Images of Africa, DIA. And what we do is show Africa's connection to countries and cultures around the world. There is no place, well, maybe that Africans throughout man's history have traveled. And by the way, everybody in here, I don't care what racial group you say you're from, it does not matter to me. Take it up with the scientific community because you are an African descendant as well. Now I know what it says on your birth certificate. I already know. But if you look at it scientifically, and see we're under the subject of one of the most prolific forms of propaganda probably created in modern times, and that's race or colorism. There is only one race. There's not five, there's not six, there's none of that. There's a bunch of nationalities. There are ethnic groups, but there's only one race. And what's that? Human. Thank you very much. So if we could just put this aside for a minute and get it out of our heads, it's going to keep coming, but you got to get it out of your head. You have to learn what comes before speech, hopefully. Thinking, thought. Hopefully, although when you talk to some people, you say, I know they weren't thinking. But it started here. Then, before it became physical, other than audio, it was usually speech. And the last manifestation of that thought would be the physical movement or creation. But anyway, I digress. Right now, we are fortunate this Black History Month to have three different, myself as one of the artists, and two other artists. I don't see them here right now. Maybe they'll get here before we go. I don't know. But let me introduce them. Mine are the small drawings here. These three, two of them definitely paintings, one of them drawing. John Hamilton. These three, all paintings, Noy Williams. So when I spoke to the two brothers, I looked, they had a lot of work more than me. But I picked out these three. I asked them, could I have these three? And we'll talk more about it later. But right now, as you see, the theme for this year is quilombos, palenques, and rooms. Does anyone know what I'm referring to when I use those three terms? Can you say it again? I'll say it one more time. Quilombos, palenques, and maroons.
I know maroons, but they're groups of people. Right?
Groups of people. What?
The tribes or most maroons are in the Caribbean. Right? There's some maroons in Jamaica and throughout that. The rest of them I don't know particularly. But I know it's South American, Central American.
Let me put it to you like this, and you probably find this in your packet. That's one of the reasons I give it to you. You don't have to read it now. Of course you can. But you will find maroon communities, primarily during the times of slavery, chattel slavery in particular. Slavery been around thousands of years, goes back in BC times. I'm not beating up on white people over here, but Europeans helped to settle. Wow, helped to settle? I don't know if they really settled the Americans. But anyway, you know what I mean. They brought the Africans over here. Well, there were people here already. You know, it was indigenous American. All right? And eventually the three mixed to become a new people. But the point is, those three words all mean maroons, community. Palenque refers to the Spanish speaking people. Quilombos refers to Brazilian or Portuguese. We'll go over it later. But since I've introduced that, let me really introduce this, and then I will go ahead and get into the meat and potatoes of tonight. Well, first of all, what are your thoughts about the dispersion of applicants brought here since, say, the 1500s, early 1500s, I might add. I'm not talking about British. I don't care. It could be British, it could be French, it could be Dutch, it could be Portuguese, it could be Spanish. All of them had a part in the Germans, but at different points. The first ones, of course, out of the box, were the Spanish and the Portuguese, not necessarily in that order. And the Catholic Church, of course, had played a big role in it too. But I'm not here to beat up on them because none of the three groups of people I just mentioned would have gotten anywhere near as far had there not been turmoil on the continent, where different African, I hesitate to call them tribes, but tribes, nations, no longer saw. They knew they was, yeah, that's a black one, yeah, but he's my enemy, he's stealing my woman, he's stealing my cow all the time. So when they had a chance to get rid of him, which they were getting rid of him anyway, in one way or the other, there were fights, people got killed, but they got rid of them. They didn't look at themselves as a homogenous group, racially or even culturally, although the cultures were different to a degree, but they had a core. I was talking to a young lady about the Spanish-speaking countries. You got a bunch of them, and last November, no, I'm sorry, in September and October, we talked about Brazil and the Spanish-speaking countries. But anyway, if you go to each country, yeah, they're gonna call this dish that, they're gonna call that one this, they're gonna call this, but there's a common thread. Number one, language. Number two, even the music, to a certain degree, has a similar thread running through it. There's many different types of music. They don't all sound alike, but there's this common thread. And that's what we have to look for, because that's why we're all human. Never mind being Spanish, French, patois, patois. So what? Matter of fact, teach me so I can learn something new instead of watching the news and all sorts of other nonsense. Okay? We have to look at the commonality, and that's what I wanted to show you here. Those three words all mean in our language maroon communities. Maroon coming from the word cimarron or cimarrones, as you find it in your pamphlets. It already breaks it down for you. It comes out of the Spanish language in particular. And it means runaways. It means mountaineers. Why mountaineers? Well, in Jamaica in particular, not only Jamaica, in portions of the Bahamas, in Puerto Rico, in Cuba, you are mountain ranges. Not the Rockies, but mountain ranges. So you gotta walk. You're gonna have to climb to get up there. All right? For us here in the United States, it's a little different. Yes, there was a mountain range. The Appalachians were here long before Columbus and a whole bunch of people. But remember, this is colonial times. We're talking about 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, into the 1800s. Even in the 1800s, America, not we, but America was just beginning to spread out. So where did the American Africans, enslaved Africans, run to? Well, everybody knows about the Seminoles. Who in here doesn't know about the Seminoles? Anyone not know about the Seminoles? Okay, so you know. But do you know that there was probably more than this too. Certainly Florida, the Gulf Coast region has a lot of swampy areas over, and well, not so much today because they've been cleared, but they still have them. Areas that are very rural. I mean, underbrush and overbrush and all that stuff. This is where they went, okay? I don't know if you're familiar with the Great Dismal Swamp. It was in the slideshow. How many are familiar with the Great Dismal Swamp? Anyone? We have a few, very good. The Great Dismal Swamp straddles the area between the southern Virginia border and the North Carolina area. So it overlaid from Virginia to North Carolina, not far from the coast. Well, in the swamps, who in their right mind would want to go and live in the swamps?
Somebody who that's home.
Yeah, but if you can't get back to the home that you know or that your grandmother, now you've been here for what, 3-4 generations? Grandma, grandpa, whoever told you about Africa. How you getting back? Okay, unless you know how to build a boat, have the time to build the boat, you ain't going back. And by the way, with these dogs and these crazy white people chasing me, now it's no Africans chasing me. yet, because that's another thing that occurred in Brazil, in the Spanish-speaking countries, in the Anglo-speaking countries, and of course, in the French-speaking, in Haiti. The white settlers would find Africans or blacks, make a deal with them, like we did back on the continent, right? And said, listen, I'll free you if you help me catch them runaway Negroes, because now we Negroes. We ain't Africans. Okay? So that happened. And it happened. Indigenous Americans, the same thing. But when I say about Maroons, at times, if you saw the plate, it said the Maroon communities were predominantly African, no matter where they were, Spanish speaking, Portuguese speaking, Dutch, it don't matter. It was still Africans, predominantly, the majority of them were Africans from various West African areas, countries rather. But a little bit better than slavery. But if you were poor and white and in Europe and wanted to get out, you wouldn't necessarily be enslaved. It certainly wasn't as bad, but it could get ugly. You were an indentured servant. Now, the difference between what was developed here, known as chattel slavery, the slavery had been around since Mesopotamia and before, but chattel slavery, that meant that was generational. Okay? This is my wife, we make a baby, I die, Master died, but Master got a son, right, or a daughter. Well, she's still alive, she's still a slave till she died, and the baby we made is also a slave. That's chattel slavery. What does that chattel sound like?
Cattle.
That's just what it was. That's why in the 50s and 60s we were talking about, I am a man. Well, we could see that. But they were referring to, come on. Too many of you are still looking, much of America is looking at black people as being, oh, well, y'all just, I don't know what to make of y'all. Wait a minute. Anyway, let me ask you this. So in the Great Dismal Swamp, we had Maroons, the Maroon community. I'll get to that in a minute. As well as in Louisiana. Turn to the page, it says Saint John Malo. Malo. Anybody speak Spanish? What is malo? Bad. Well, if you want to do what the white settler group wanted you to do, as I showed you, you can get some of this. You saw that man's back, didn't you? All right, that's a classic picture some of you seen before. You can get laughed. Imagine, I'm going to give you the job of lashing this person 100 times. You'll be tired. But you won't be in the pain that that person getting their lashes. Okay? How did they heal them? Because in the 1800s, medicine wasn't what it is today. Yeah, they had doctors. The Africans knew they were herbal masters. Not all, but always in the community somewhere. There was someone who knew herbology. They could go out and get plants. They knew what to do with them. Okay? And so this happened. Let's go back to the Greek. Anybody find St. John Malo? Okay, where is he from? Not the Great Dismal Swamp. Where? I'm sorry. I didn't hear. Anybody? New Orleans. New Orleans. Well, Louisiana.
New Orleans.
Right. Louisiana, New Orleans region. Yes. And I'm not going to ask you to read, see, I don't even have mine anymore. But you can, according to the settlers, oh no, this ain't weak. Yeah, we got to get this guy. And eventually, of course, they do. But in terms of the people that he was a part of, the Africans, oh no, he was in good trouble. You know, and when you read some of the things, similar to what, I think it was, it wasn't just a letter. It was either Dutty I think it was Duddy Bookman and Cecile Fatima, when they went in a swamp again, there was a prayer that was said. I have a copy of it, I didn't bring it. But anyone of us, if we all were enslaved, you wouldn't mind how you gonna get out of slavery, how you gonna get this person off your back. You don't like to think violence, but it's being perpetrated on you every day. Your loved one, you're a child. You may not love your woman or your man, but your child. They get it. And you want me to turn what? To be what? Bible. There's no holy book you can give me that makes sense as to why you are treating me and us like this. But another part of the great propaganda. All right. So, St. John Malo, we have others. When I spoke of the Seminole, one of the Seminole members, actually, he was a chief, and I marked it down in here too, John Horse. Now, John Horse was reported to be a Black indigenous American. For those who, like myself, up until only a couple of years ago, think that the indigenous Americans were only, I'm gonna give them a color because this is a color that has been assigned to them. Like we're Black, they are red. Like the Asians, the East Asians in particular, are yellow. It's a derogatory term, I know. Well, white folks. Is white folks white? No! It is very light. Okay? But anyway. This particular fellow, John Horse, was not alone. I don't know the numbers. There were numerous Africans that were here and had become indigenous. And for those of you who were here for Indigenous American Month, why I keep saying indigenous, not Native American? Why? Why? Why?
Because there was no America.
There was no America, but the difference in the two terms, native or indigenous.
Native just means born here.
Right, but indigenous refers to what? You've been here for many generations. This country is just around 250 years old or so. It's an empire. It's been one since what, post-World War II or thereabouts, which takes us back to about 70, 80 years ago. And look what shape we're in. Okay? Now, I'm not here to quantify pain, but I'm trying to draw you a picture, and I know by now it's probably gotten really murky. But when you think of empire, prior to this, it was the British. Before the British, or the French even got over here, when I say it's over here, they haven't field that. It's two groups, two national groups. No. Bring Africans over here.
Oh,
What Europeans? Right. The Spanish. And the Portuguese. Right. The French, the Dutch, the English. Johnny, come late, please. Okay? And what was it, 5 years ago, when we had a great hoopla about 2019 and 1619. Now, I'm not going to say that the young lady said this was the beginning of Black people's history in America, but it seemed to get in people's minds like it was, like she had said.
The first one, but they weren't.
Right. Much before it. And we did not come here as slaves first. That was our last iteration coming. As a matter of fact, we weren't coming here, we was brought here, snatched. But there was time when we came voluntarily. The Europeans learned from the Africans that the world was round, not flat. The church, Catholic Church, there was no Protestants at that time. The Catholic Church, what is that? Or Holly, You crazy? Hanging. You know, you was a witch. You doing spells? You know, all of that. Most of those women, it's the only witch hunter. Some were probably doing some funny stuff. But primarily, the reason they were thought of as witches was because they were herbalists, because they knew how to speak to spirit and create things that the European mind hadn't really thought about yet, didn't understand yet. So, you know, they gotta go too. But anyway, John and the fellas, did we talk about the Indigenous Americans? Indians,
You're getting
did Indigenous Americans ever enslave anyone? Yes. Who?
there.
What group of, what do the people look like? Most of the people who they enslaved, what do they look like?
Europeans.
No, they didn't.
And each
Well,
other.
Indians?
primarily themselves and these new Africans, these darkies coming over here. Okay? Now, like I said before, some of the Indigenous Americans who were not of an African phenotype, they knew that they were African phenotypical Indigenous Americans. They were told, they saw them, they interacted. But I'm saying there's a new bunch now. And this bunch look like the Indigenous bunch that's been here. But these are being brought over here to work. So yes, Indigenous Americans enslaved some of their own kind as well as Africans. Right, enslaved them. But the difference many times, and slavery of any sort is but chattel slavery. Remember chattel slavery. Okay. Comments, questions. Because I'm running my mouth and y'all just sitting here and letting me do it. Go ahead.
How you feeling today, sir? It's this, you can go on with this topic for days, but so you had the Africans brought to the Americans, and if you look at the route which they disembarked, yeah, it was all up and down the coast for sure, all the way down to, like you said, Haiti and Brazil, but it seemed for some reason to be, from like, I guess Maryland, maybe Delaware, the Carolinas on down, very heavy as far as the slavery and I, you learn something every day. The guy told me, he says that the reason why the people who enslaved the Africans picked us to work the fields is because our skin was dark and we could take the sun when we're out in the field more so than a different race. So that's why they picked us. So therefore, that they had all of us up and down the coast. Now,
Let me just add to this point right here. That's a classic reason, but that's not the only reason. And when they stole these Africans, they didn't just take every old run-of-the-mill African run around there with little to no talent. What do you think that slide was? Royalty? They took some royalty. But beyond the royalty, they had skilled labor. And they knew who knew how to grow rice, who knew how to grow cotton, who knew how to grow sugarcane or something similar to it. And that's where they took them. Now remember this. Between North and South America, as long as you stay in the eastern portion of this Western Hemisphere, there are what?
Water.
Water. What's in the water other than sharks? There are little land masses. What am I saying? Islands. You have the Greater Antilles of Puerto Rico, Cuba, once called Hispaniola, now the Dominican Republic and Haiti, and Jamaica. You have those actually 5 islands, nation islands, but 4 islands. And then you have the lesser ones. And like us, we saw about the Taino, yeah, they were all in the Caribbean and probably went ashore into Central, some of them into Central and South America. But similarly, the Africans, I was talking to a young lady today, was telling me about the Jamaican, some of her heritage is Jamaican, because that particular, I'll call it ancestor, although I don't think it's quite that far back, but that's where he came from. And he was a obvious black man. Okay? Jamaicans were not the only islanders. There were Trinidadians, Barbadians, and others who came. One last thing. Out of the Caribbean, there's a group, and I think it's Dominica. Yeah, Dominica. Not the Dominican Republic. There's a little island called Dominica. And from that island is a group called the Kalinago. Also a, well, obvious
Indigenous
African
tribe.
phenotype when you look at them, most of them. Okay? So there's a lot going on here. And all I want to say is, if you think you're American, and you could go back about 6, 7, 8 generations, you might find that you got a Brazilian cousin, you have a Haitian cousin, you have, well, you got a cousin up in Canada. What? Was there slavery in Canada?
Yes.
Oh, how y'all know? Y'all are smart. I was taught slavery, nah, that's the last stop for the Underground Railroad, for Negroes to be free. Then, here it is there. And you have it in here. All right, an article I happened to run across, the former, who is she? Secretary General of Canada. She's out of office now, so she can speak freely. She is from Haitian heritage. And Governor General, I'm sorry. We always hear about the Prime Minister being the head of the government of Canada, and he is. But the Governor General is like Commander in Chief. Whoever that person is, they are the top person of the military. So she had a pretty prestigious position in the government at one time.
All right, I just one more thing. So in this, I touched on in my time looking up things and reading, but I really haven't gotten, I really 100% shit, but I really haven't known this story much of. So, Sherman, who was in the Civil War, suggested to Lincoln that we should take the blacks and deport them, quote unquote, and back to I forget where it was at somewhere, but I wanted to know, how did Liberia get started? What's the story behind? Was it something else before Liberia? And then what did?
Oh, there's always something else before Liberia. Liberia was an American invention, so to speak, but there was people there, ethnicities there, indigenous to that area. I can't tell you that. Similarly, for France with Sierra Leone. And by the way, going back to Canada, the Maroons that were, when they were in Jamaica trying to handle those Africans down there, they took a bunch of them. As a matter of fact, here's the picture. I showed it to you here where you saw the brother. He was built with the musket. He was one of them that they took. He was a leader of one of the Maroon groups. They took them to guess where? Nova Scotia. In time, they negotiated the deal somehow. Those same Maroons out of Jamaica, this is where they wound up, in Sierra Leone, back on the continent. Okay, so they got back home. I don't know how many groups and how many stories are like that, but here are some of them. And when I give you, and by the way, when you take this home and turn it over, you're going to see helpful hints. Helpful hints is a bunch of sites that I got this information from. And hopefully you will be able to do your own research and learn. And the next time you talk to somebody, you'll sound much better than me. You'll know more than me. And you'll say, listen, no. That. Oh, last stop on the Underground Railroad, Canada? No, I don't think so. because it wasn't in the sense we were taught. You had free people taken there, not only slaves together, and some in America as well, the United States of America. You had free blacks, one way or the other, they were free. But you know how easy it would be for them not to be free?
Yeah.
What was that movie?
12 years ago.
It was about that very thing.
I think you touched on it a couple times in a couple ways about the back and forth to Africa. Previously, first, when I was in elementary school, it came up to me when they were talking about America Best Museum. Just found out that wasn't his original name, he changed it to it. Right? But either way, right? When I first found out about him, he had a African translator, right? And I was like, unless this translator is psychic, he's been here before. Right, and unless he's a psychic translator, if he's a psychic African translator, that he brings people and knows how to speak their language, right? So the propaganda didn't make sense to me even as a small kid. But then going further with the back and forth, Columbus and the fictitious and real story of Pocahontas was about the slave trade where they were snatching up the indigenous people from here, dropping them off Africa, through Europe, right? And in that mixture, in my mind's eye is history, I said that could have been some of in their wars, where you just drop these strange people off and expect them to do something. And then also just the indigenous, being an indigenous person, plans from here, from the Americans, right? They all came in different colors, we're all like, there was some of us blue black, right, that were indigenous here, right, that are from areas, and I was told the story as a kid that the Seminoles, I heard two different. I heard that they weren't indigenous, and then they ran. This wasn't in my home. This was in somebody else's. I learned this in school, and then they ran the wrong direction. They were foolish. They ran the wrong direction to freedom. Right. But what I was taught at home is that they went home, back to Florida. They went home, right? They knew where they were going. They went home, the Seminoles. Right, and that's the story I was taught at home compared to the propaganda we were taught at school. And I think we don't talk enough about the claim we have here and to the continent. Right, my partner, business partner, he is from the continent, and we have these discussions all the time, and we're talking about the diaspora and the difference. And then he was saying that the only people who think of Africa as a place to unify are African Americans, right? So he was saying we would also be the cure of the continent and the diaspora throughout it, because we think of it here. He said you're so tribal, right? So many different languages,
so
disjointed, and don't see each other as one, right? Compared to here, that's the same thing that happened to the clans here, right? We always fought against each other, but in the end, we have to learn how we have joint issues. That's why I love your things. So, just to talk about some of the good stuff, but I don't think we talk about the history that we have here, and some of the weird things that are popping up now.
Well, it's incumbent upon us as adults of whatever age, if you have children or if you don't have children, but you're an auntie or you're an uncle, it's incumbent upon you to bring them a little of that knowledge. Right, each one teach one. You can't teach what you don't know. But I'm not letting you use it as an excuse. That's why you're taking that piece of paper home. You're gonna use it. All right. So, but the reason, let me get someone put this down. You see this map, as you can see. All right, this is the Arnold Peters projection. It is not the usual Mercator, but you can still recognize the land masses. Notice it is this area in here that the vast majority of Africans were stolen from and brought over here.
Close.
If you ever look at a map that has currents, you will see that each of the oceans, there are let's say they're circular, they're not really circular, but they're rotating or revolving currents, easy for you to get over here in the Western Hemisphere, coming off the West Coast. All right? Easy. Look at Brazil, sticking out. Big old pot belly Brazil. But slide on up north. Before you get to the United States, you can't help but find yourself in the Caribbean. And even Columbus sailed further west than Hispaniola, Cuba, the Bahamas, even he went further west. And eventually, if not him, other conquistadors came and they found countries in Central America, in Mexico, which is now part of Central America. Now it's North America. But there was a time not that long ago that from Mexico down was all Latin America. If there's somebody in here that's my age or around my age, you might remember they used to describe Latin America as from the Mexican-United States border down, including the Caribbean, all right? But now, all of a sudden, it's politically, important to pull Mexico in. And they still lambast Mexico, So we live as Americans, as humans on this planet, in a very sordid history. And it's left up to us to really seek out our own history. I believe it was Arthur Schomburg. I love Schomburg. He said, the Negro must dig up his past. Pardon his machismo. Hers, doesn't matter. I know you're not Negroes, but you get the idea. Because it's only us that's going to find our history. That's why when you see some of those shirts, and when I'm not in my semi-African regalia, I have a shirt that has the continent on it, and it says our stories. Next month, in a week and a half, we're not going to do women's history.
Her history.
We're going to do women's history. I didn't make that up, but I loved it when I heard it. It was just like she wrote. Oh, Harriet Tubman, she was a hero. No!
She was
a hero. I don't know who she went to bed with. That's unimportant. But what is important, we know she's a female. So call her that. Women have for too long been secondary to men. And there's nothing secondary about it. Because after if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be here. Okay? Yeah, they need a little help from the male. But that's all they need. That's why the Black Widow spider, she knew she could get out of here. Whoop! Next male.
Speaking of the female and male dynamic, a lot of when the Africans came over, they made it up with indigenous women up here, thinking that we were docile. But also in the indigenous clans, women ran it. Right? We had war chiefs that were the men, but
Just like that.
right, exactly. We ran the tribes. We weren't docile or anything. We decided how things go. And in fact, all these old movies where they had, people kidnapping European women. No, they ran to the Indian tribes because there were freedoms inside of it.
Well, that's why I said in my reading, there were some whites, not many. Because number one, they were indentured servants, which was not as bad as being a slave. But it wasn't a nice job to have either. And I'm sure there were some masters of those indentured servants, although both of them European. There was some nasty, bad, and you don't want to be part of the household. So if you heard these Africans, these Negroes running away, and they knew something, and you said, I'm not going through with this anymore. Hey, wait for me. And even today, when you look at the Black community, you're one of the most welcoming groups there is in terms of other races, as well as people in general. But I'm under the tyranny of the clock, and our two artists are here. And I would just like them to take a short, little bit of time and explain, well, talk about your work. You got 5 minutes, that's it, I'm on the clock. Who would like to go first? Brother Noah Williams, you want to go? Or it's Brother John Hamilton right here. Who first? Whoever.
Stand up, my brother.
All right, you stand up, please. And just tell us a little bit. You got 5 minutes, though. 5.
Yeah, when I create art, I try not to get philosophical.
philosophical or political with it. You know, I try to do it for humanity, not any particular group or anything. It just so happens when Charles came by to get some art, he happened to choose the girl and James Baldwin. I tried to talk him into taking another picture of James Baldwin, but he wanted this particular one. Like this was done about 3 years ago. And the thing about art is you have to keep a log, which is the art piece itself, progressing. And I tried to tell him, well, this is better than that. The one in the middle, he liked it because he was talking about the swamp. He said how
It reminded me of
that would be for what he was, trying to portray to you. I really like it. I chose landscapes because there's no politics in landscape. It's just art, serenity of art. Like I said, I paint for other artists, women dressed with other women. That's the way I paint. The little girl in I was going to send it to my mother in Atlanta for a birthday gift. But Charles wanted to use it, so I had to put it, I called her and told her I had to
Well, that's a
put it
shame.
on.
It's coming, Mom, it's coming.
Yeah,
It's a little late.
Yeah, still on the good side. But I don't remember going along as I could about myself. So I tried to put it old one. But I've only been doing this like 10 years. And
Wow.
I really feel like I've been blessed.
Yeah.
The amount of time I've been pursuing it.
Are these all oils?
The two on the ends are oils and the one in the middle is acrylic. And so,
Acrylic being a water medium for those who don't know.
yeah. Okay, I don't want to go on and on about me, but because
That's
the
answer.
answer.
That's the answer.
These three, John Hamilton, I'll let him take his 5 minutes. He's famous beyond me, but let him explain.
First of all, I didn't come here to say anything about my artwork. But I was looking at James Baldwin, and I remember years ago I went to a party, and he used to live in New York by the United Nations building, and I got invited to a party with Nathan Hurd. I don't know how many people ever heard of Nathan Hurd, but he was my brother. So, anyway, as far as these pieces, I don't know really what to say. This was a pencil drawing that when I was attending Newark State College, which is now Kane College.
I was a king.
Well, I went at the time that the Kane estate was across the street, and they gave the property to the college, and the college in return named it Kane College. But anyway, this was just a pencil drawing that I had done. And they actually won award just for being pencil, not any specific type of pencil. But
What year was that? What year was that roughly? What year was that?
as far as that,
Well,
This-
yeah.
oh, I can't tell you what year any of these things was. Because what happens, I have like over 100 pieces now.
Wow.
And I have just gotten into 3D art. Now, as far as a lot of things that he was saying, I mean, I just broke up with a woman that I have been with for the last 10 years from Sierra Leone. When he mentioned up there by Maine, Nova Scotia. Yeah, I went to Halifax, Nova Scotia many years ago. And I was so surprised when I saw all those black people. I didn't expect to see any because I didn't know anything about Nova Scotia. Nobody ever even heard of Nova Scotia before. And all of a sudden I go and I go downtown and I see all these black people and I go to a black club. And there was a guy there, they said, live from New York City. And the brother came out, and so I said, I can't wait, because I'm from New York. I can't wait to meet him. So after the show, I said, hey man, how you doing? What part of New York you from? He said, from all over. Say, wait a minute, man, I'm from New York. And nobody's from all over. What part of New York you from? He said, well, I'm really not from there, but I've been there. Anyway, this piece, most of the artwork that I do, it develops by itself. And I might start to do a picture, and I might see a picture, say, of a little kid like this. And then I would say, what could I do with it? And then I might say, well, I'm going to put some wings on him. And then what's he doing with the wings, you know? Then I might say, hey, well, he could be saving somebody, doing something. And I thought, like a child, you know, helping to bring up a little piece of humanity.
Sure.
As far as this,
You got about
I
30
saw
seconds,
this guy.
30 seconds, 30 seconds.
There's a book.
30 seconds. I'm running this.
There's a book called The Black Book. And I saw this guy's face, and then I just liked the expression of his face. And I just saw it, and then I said, what could make somebody look something like that? You know, what could give somebody an expression? What would cause somebody to look like that with the eyes and the mouth and the sadness? And you can see, I mean, that he's been through some life. And so then I saw a picture of some guys hanging. Fruit. And then if you look here, I just made a little thing around his neck. So some people would say, was that him, or was it, you know, did they try to hang him before? Is that his son? So I like to paint that people can make up their own stories. As far as this, it's just a picture, but it's a family picture. There's a little dog in here. There's a little kid. And they're walking on the road, and you don't see anything up ahead, just a long road. And so it just seemed to, you know, just be creative for me. I mean, and I wouldn't let him take some of my other pieces. I have some new pieces that I've just done, and I can't even lend them out right now. But I'm glad that he asked to use a few pieces. And he selected these pieces himself.
Lord, thank you, both artists. I was telling someone that I was really blessed tonight because usually the only visual art, other than the slideshow or some visual piece you see in here, is me. So I'm glad to have two other visual artists. Hopefully, as we progress through the year, we'll get some performing artists. We have at least one here tonight, but she's not performing. And plus, we're in the tyranny of the clock. But you know what? Next month. Pardon me. Male and female. Yeah, right. I must be blind. There are two illustrious. Oh, wait a minute. And we have another thespian here, at least, not maybe as prolific as you two, certainly, but he does a little something too. But anyway, and then we have a young musician. You must look out for this young gentleman who is, well, what do you play?
Guitar.
Guitar. What type of music do you like to play?
Right now, jazz guitar, but I played everything.
Repeat the last part again.
I played everything.
Everything. And when you hear him, you can be heard on YouTube as well.
Yeah, YouTube, Instagram.
What's your name?
Marel Fidalgo. MARDLHIDALGO.
Okay, write that down.
I listen to a lot of drill pads, yeah, older classics.
Very classic.
Yeah, of course.
Don't get me started about music.
But, you know, we're so fortunate because when I see a young person, this young man is still of high school age. And he plays.
High school.
That's beautiful.
He plays like, you know, a master. I mean, if you didn't watch him, you listen, you say, oh, he's like, who's that? What? A kid? Sorry. I mean, me personally, but from my perspective, well, most people in the room are young. You're really young. So, we're very fortunate. We don't know who's walking around in our communities, and hence why I do some of this work, because when you look at people, you might think they are one thing, come to find out their ethnicity, their nationality, their bloodline is something completely different. I mean, we were joking. I said, what a Puerto Rican is like. But some of us have an image. Me too. But I know better. I just hope to be able to have us look a little broader and take a second look at the thoughts we're having about the society we live in. Love to talk more. Thank you for